Hey everyone, welcome to Dr. Manohar Explains. My name is Akshay Manohar. So today's video is about HIV and AIDS. Now, HIV can be a little bit difficult to understand, not just for the general public, but for medical professionals as well. So I thought I'd do this video to help people understand. Now, the first thing we're going to have to find out is what exactly a virus is. Now, viruses are found all over the world. They're tiny molecules. And HIV is a type of a virus. That's what the V in HIV stands for. Viruses exist in everything that you see, including in this picture, but you can't see it at this scale. To really understand, you have to zoom in. Now let's zoom in on her hair. A single strand of human hair is 20 to 180 microns wide. Now that's an average of about 75 microns or 0.003 inches or 0.0075 centimeters. Now it's still too big to see viruses, but at this level you could see bacteria. A single bacterial cell is about 10 microns in length. Now that speck that you see on the screen is actually still too big for an actual virus because viruses are about 0.1 microns in size. Viruses are super tiny compared to bacteria, and they can infect all kinds of cells in all kinds of organisms. And in fact, even bacteria can get infected by viruses. There are many different types of viruses, and they all come in different shapes and sizes. Some viruses are made from DNA, and other viruses are made from RNA. One of the way we classify viruses is based on how they make copies of themselves. Now, normally, DNA gets converted into RNA, but retroviruses like HIV turn themselves back into DNA first, which is the opposite of how most of the viruses form. And now let's talk about HIV. HIV stands for Human Immunodeficiency Virus. HIV is an RNA virus. It is a retrovirus, and it's transmitted mainly by three ways. One is through blood, such as when sharing needles. The hollow of the needle contains infected blood, and it can be passed from person to person this way. This happens more often to people who use IV drugs with others. Blood that is donated is usually tested for HIV before it's cleared for transfusion. The most common way of transmitting HIV is through sex without condoms. For children to get HIV, it's usually when people who are pregnant transmit the virus to the baby. So when it comes to prevention, these are the things we look at. Don't share needles, wear condoms during sex, and people who are pregnant should take medicines to help prevent the spread of HIV to the child. So let's talk about what HIV does in the bloodstream. But before that, let's start with what blood really is. We've heard the phrase blood is thicker than water, and that's because it's made up of many things. The red from blood comes from red blood cells that carry oxygen throughout our bodies. And then we have a very complex system called the immune system that helps us defend against, well, everything that nature throws at us. So in the blood, we have white blood cells, different types of them actually. But the ones we're going to talk about today is a type of cell called a lymphocyte, of which there's one called a CD4 T lymphocyte. And that's very important when it comes to understanding HIV. HIV makes copies of itself once inside our bodies. These copies are made using mechanics inside the T cell. But it's not a simple in and out thing. It has to go through many steps, and understanding these are important when it comes to creating treatments that block the virus at these various steps. Don't worry about how complex this slide looks. I'm going to break it down for you. Now, the first step that's involved is called binding. It's when the HIV is floating around in the blood and then it comes across the T cell and then latches on. Now, the outside of the CD4 lymphocyte is covered in a membrane, and it's not easy to get in and out of a cell. You have to go through particular doorways, for example. Now, all of these doors, just imagine that they have locks on them, and HIV has a key that's able to open these locks. Now, in order for the keys to work, the key has to fit a specific lock. So, what happens if you change the lock? Well, the key is not going to work anymore. And that's what happens to people who are immune to HIV. They have different locks on the outside of these cells, and the HIV just has the same key. It's not going to be able to get in. Now, this step is also important when it comes to certain medications such as Maraviroc, which uh, prevent the key and lock mechanism from happening. The next step involves fusion and entry. Now think of it like the International Space Station, and you have a spaceship that goes up there and locks on. Now the door has to open as soon as it locks on, and then the astronauts have to go in. And that's sort of the same mechanism here. Again, Maraviroc and fostemsavir and other medications work at this site. The third step is where HIV converts from RNA into DNA using an enzyme called reverse transcriptase. This is what makes it a retrovirus. And this enzyme is very important when it comes to treatment of HIV because there are medicines that inhibit reverse transcriptase. They're called non-nucleoside reverse transcriptase inhibitors, such as rilpivirine and efavirenz in the second column, or nucleoside reverse transcriptase inhibitors, such as tenofovir, emtricitabine, abacavir, lamivudine, and the first medicine that was ever made for HIV called zidovudine. The next step takes us into the nucleus of the cell. Now, in the center of the cell is a nucleus. It looks kind of like the yolk of an egg. It's where DNA is stored and DNA is reproduced in our bodies. And HIV goes in there and uses the same mechanism to make copies of itself. So there's already a factory involved, and HIV just uses the mechanics to make its own copies. It's kind of like going into your office and making illegal photocopies. And this integration is stopped by medications like dolutegravir, bictegravir, cabotegravir, and so on, which are integrase inhibitors. These are very important medicines and are one of the first-line medicines used for the treatment of HIV today, in combination with the previous medicines, tenofovir, emtricitabine, lamivudine, abacavir, which are the nucleoside reverse transcriptase inhibitors. The next step involves HIV leaving the nucleus of the cell and going to the cell surface. Now, while it's still within the cell, there are more processes happening, such as protein synthesis, assembly, and so on, to make an immature HIV virus. So the next thing HIV needs to do is it has to form a bud, like it pushes itself out of the cell and forms an immature virus. But it's not ready yet to cause further infection until it releases an enzyme called protease, and that breaks up the large protein chains in the immature viruses and create mature infectious HIV viruses. This step is also stopped by medications such as darunavir, ritonavir, indinavir, lopinavir, which are slightly older medications, but darunavir, ritonavir are still used as first-line medications. So what are the consequences of all of this? So HIV ends up killing the CD4 cell where it makes copies of itself. And these CD4 cells are important in protecting us from things in the environment, such as fungi like Candida that can cause oral thrush and thrush inside the food pipe, parasites like Toxoplasma, cancers, other viruses, and other bacteria as well that can cause infections, such as tuberculosis, which is a very common co-infection with HIV in many parts of the world. And that brings us to AIDS. So HIV is the virus that causes AIDS. AIDS is an acquired immunodeficiency syndrome. It's the situation we get when the virus has destroyed the immune system so much that the immune system doesn't work, and it's not able to protect the body like it should. There are many conditions that cause AIDS-defining conditions, and they're all listed here. They're from the CDC website. You can follow this link to find out more about them. Now, this used to be a bigger distinction before when we were deciding when to treat people. Now, the consensus is you treat everybody with a diagnosis of HIV before any of these damaging things happen to them. And that's our video. Thank you for watching. If you'd like more videos, any particular topics that you'd like me to discuss, write them in the comments below. Share these with your friends and follow the links below. These are more reliable sources than you would find anywhere on the internet. Definitely more than you would find on Facebook and WhatsApp forwards that are sent to you. These are resources that I follow myself and many infectious disease doctors follow. Thank you for watching.